The morning sun spilled through the open blinds as I helped Sarah ease from her wheelchair onto the living room couch. We had only been in our new home for 3 days, still unpacking, still learning the quirks of the creaky floorboards and the sounds of a new neighborhood. Sycamore Ridge was supposed to be our sanctuary, a place to start fresh after years of city noise and apartment elevators that always broke down. Sarah, once a tenacious K-9 officer with the local police department, now bore the physical scars of a high-speed chase gone wrong. A collapsed staircase during a suspect pursuit had left her with partial mobility, a brace on one leg, and a relentless will that hadn't faded one bit. Her service dog, Max, had since passed, but the bond they'd shared was immortalized in photos and medals. "Can you get that?" she asked, adjusting the brace around her knee. The doorbell had rung twice, a sharp sound that echoed through the still mostly empty house. I walked to the door, still a little sore from lifting boxes the day before. The woman standing there looked like she'd stepped straight out of a suburban horror film. Immaculate blonde hair, manicured nails, a crisp blazer, and a clipboard held like a weapon. Flanked by two stern-looking men in matching HOA polos, she wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said with a voice coated in forced cheer. "I'm Eleanor Matthews, president of the Sycamore Ridge Homeowners Association. We're here with your welcome packet and your first month's dues." I blinked, thrown off. "That's strange. Our realtor told us this property was exempt from the HOA. It's in the closing documents." Eleanor's smile slipped like a cracked mask. "There must be some mistake. Every home in Sycamore Ridge is part of our association. It's mandatory." "Not according to our paperwork," I replied, a little firmer. "This house was developed before the HOA even existed. We have grandfather rights." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll need to see these supposed documents. The board meeting is Wednesday. At 7 p.m., bring them then." She shoved a thick, glossy folder into my hands. "In the meantime, you'll need to remove that ramp by your front door. The rules apply to everyone, Mr. Reynolds." I stood frozen in place as she turned and walked off, her clipboard tucked under one arm like a saber. I shut the door with more force than necessary, my hands trembling with anger. "What was that about?" Sarah asked from the couch. I dropped the folder into her lap. "We just met the local dictator." Sarah flipped through the HOA packet with growing disbelief. 56 pages of rules? Grass must be no taller than 2 inches. No flags unless it's an approved holiday. What the hell? She says your van can't be in the driveway because of the K-9 unit decal. Sarah's jaw clenched. "That's not just illegal, that's discrimination. The ADA clearly—" "I know," I interrupted gently. "We'll fight this." We spent the rest of the evening at our dining room table, sorting through documents from our closing file. The original deed, the development map, a dated record of subdivision from a decade before Sycamore Ridge even existed. It was all there. Ironclad proof that our property was never included in the HOA's jurisdiction. "This isn't just overreach," Sarah said, setting her jaw. "It's bullying." By the time we went to bed, we had a plan. We'd bring every document to the meeting. We'd speak calmly, clearly, and legally. But neither of us expected the battle to begin before we even got the chance. The next morning was typical. I left for work at my usual time, and Sarah prepped for physical therapy, which was scheduled for mid-morning. When my phone rang during lunch, I immediately knew something was wrong. "They booted my van," Sarah said, fury lacing her voice. "I can't get to therapy." "What? Who did?" "Eleanor. And some towing company she hired. They're still here." I left work without a word, speeding home through red lights and near misses. When I arrived, I saw Sarah in her wheelchair, blocking a tow truck driver from accessing her van. Her expression was icy calm, the look she'd worn on the job before taking down an armed suspect. "This is illegal," she was saying, her tone sharp as glass. "You can't tow from private property without proper legal notice." I Have authorization right here, the driver responded, waving a form with Eleanor's signature. This property isn't in the HOA, I added, stepping between them. You don't have any authority here, the driver shrugged. I just go where they tell me. Eleanor crossed the street, arms folded, a smug smile on her face. Maybe this will motivate you to attend Wednesday's meeting. Sarah's voice dropped low. Remove the boot now, or I make one phone call, and you'll have 5 patrol cars here in minutes, investigating this as attempted theft. The driver hesitated. Eleanor scoffed. She's bluffing. Sarah calmly pulled out her phone. Her wallpaper was a photo of her badge. She made the call. 15 minutes later, the boot was removed. A young patrol officer, Sarah's former rookie, stopped by to check in. Eleanor retreated to her house without a word, but she had drawn first blood. That night, I installed security cameras around the property. Sarah called her lawyer friend, a specialist in housing discrimination. We were ready to fight. But Eleanor wasn't finished. The next morning, our driveway was blocked by a suspiciously parked car. Anonymous complaints were filed to the city. Our wheelchair ramp was unsightly. Our sprinkler violated water restrictions, and a neighbor even claimed to hear barking from a non-existent dog. Sarah watched from the window as Eleanor led a group of HOA members in a property value walk, pausing conspicuously in front of our home. They're trying to wear us down, she muttered. They want us to leave, I said. Sarah narrowed her eyes. No, Eleanor wants control, and I think there's something else. Did you see how fast that tow truck arrived? I bet there's a kickback. What's our next move? Sarah's expression hardened. We build a case. We spent that night digging. Sarah reached out to old police contacts, and within hours we had a few leads. Eleanor had 3 prior complaints filed against her for HOA overreach, all mysteriously dropped. Public records revealed she owned a rental property in another county, with the same towing company's sign out front. She's running a side hustle, Sarah muttered, and she thinks no one will notice. Wednesday was coming. We doubled down. Sarah gathered every relevant law and ADA guideline. I printed aerial photos of our property showing its development date. We were ready for war. But when I came home from work Tuesday evening, I found our driveway empty. Sarah's van was gone. Panic surged in my chest as I called her phone. No answer. Minutes felt like hours, until I received a call from an unknown number. Jake, it's me. Sarah's voice was strained. They towed my van again. While I was at therapy. I'm at Rapid Recovery Impound. They want $450 to release it. My heart pounded. I drove straight there. Sarah stood in the office, arms crossed, fury radiating from her like heat. The clerk barely looked up when I argued. This vehicle is equipped for a disabled person, I said. You can't tow it. Take it up with the HOA, he replied. We paid the fee. When we reached the van, a new scratch marred the ramp. Sarah's eyes were like steel. Take pictures, all of them. She began calling. Her lawyer, a former news reporter, even her old captain. As we pulled into our driveway, our neighbor Frank waved. Heard what happened, he said. Those flags along your property? They mark the original boundary. Your house was never part of their precious HOA. Sarah smiled. The first real one in days. She picked the wrong family, Sarah said quietly. The community hall was buzzing with hushed conversation as we walked in that Wednesday evening. A folding table at the front bore a modest banner. Sycamore Ridge HOA Monthly Meeting. Eleanor Matthews stood behind it, flanked by her usual lieutenants. Her eyes landed on us the moment we entered, her smile as sharp as a scalpel. We took our seats in the second row, binder in hand, documents organized by tab. Sarah adjusted her brace and kept her expression unreadable. Let's begin, Eleanor said. First order of business, A resident refusal to comply with community guidelines. Lot 17B, the Reynolds household. Murmurs erupted. A few heads turned. Sarah raised her hand calmly. Before you continue, I'd like to clarify something. You'll have your say after the board reads its complaint, Eleanor replied coolly. No, Sarah said, voice firm. You're accusing us in front of our neighbors. We deserve to be heard. Reluctantly, Eleanor motioned for her to speak. Sarah stood. Our property, 17B, is legally exempt from HOA oversight. Here's our deed, the original plat map, and a signed document from the county recorder's office. She passed copies to the table. This house was built 5 years before the HOA was incorporated. No annexation vote was ever held. You have no authority over our home. Eleanor tried to interrupt, but Sarah wasn't finished. Furthermore, your towing actions violated the ADA. Twice. My mobility-accessible van was illegally removed from private property. We have photos, video, and police records. Gasps rippled through the room. One man at the back raised his hand. Wait, she's not part of the HOA? Another woman frowned. Why's she being fined then? Eleanor's face darkened. This meeting is not for debate. Then we'll take it to the county board, I interjected. And to the press, and to a civil rights attorney. A tense silence fell. A man in a veteran's cap stood. I vote we drop this nonsense. If they aren't part of the HOA, then let them be. The motion passed, unofficially. Eleanor's face was a storm cloud, but her eyes said one thing. This wasn't over. The next morning, the retaliation began. A post appeared on the Sycamore Ridge Community Facebook page. Some residents think they're above the rules. ADA or not, this neighborhood was built on order and decency. Though no names were mentioned, the comments told the story. I heard they're suing the HOA just to avoid paying dues. People like that ruin nice neighborhoods. Fake disability, probably. Sarah read each comment with her lips tight, her hands trembling. This is defamation, she said. I served this damn community for 10 years. I took down drug dealers. I lost half my mobility because I was trying to protect someone. I reached over and shut the laptop. Then let's remind them who you are. We created our own post. A video of Sarah explaining her injuries, her service, and what the HOA had done. No anger, just facts. It spread like wildfire. Messages poured in. Some apologetic, some in support, a few vicious. Then came the fake reports. Anonymous emails were sent to the police. Strange smells from our garage. That we were hoarding animals. That we were dealing drugs. It was laughable, but the harassment was wearing us down. Sarah's old precinct confirmed none of it held weight. But still, the patrol cars rolled by. The looks from neighbors. The notes left on our windshield. I didn't fight off gang members to get bullied by a suburban tyrant, she muttered one night. Then let's take this to court, I said. She nodded. And I'm calling in some favors. With legal action. On the table we began reaching out to neighbors. Discreetly. We started with Frank, the elderly man across the street. He'd lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. She pulled the same garbage on me when my wife was dying, he told us. Said our rose bushes violated the Uniform Landscaping Code. I didn't have the fight in me back then. But you're making her sweat. Another family, the Nguyens, admitted Eleanor had fined them $500 for decorative window film that was, in fact, medical-grade tint for their autistic son. She threatened to report us to CPS, Mrs. Nguyen whispered. We thought about moving, but we couldn't afford it. In total, we collected 7 testimonies. Each one revealed the same pattern. Eleanor used the HOA like her personal fiefdom. Arbitrary fines, harassment, quiet pressure to force out non-conformers. She's picking people who won't fight back, Sarah said, taking notes. Then let's organize them, I added. We held a backyard meeting. Frank, the Nguyens, a retired teacher named Monica, a single dad, Darren, who'd been hit with fines for having too many toys on his porch. We're not powerless, Sarah told them. We've got the law, the press, and each other, but we need to be loud. They nodded. Sycamore Ridge was about to learn the cost of silence. By the end of the week, Sarah received a letter. Not from the HOA, but from a private attorney. A cease and desist claimed her online attacks were damaging Eleanor's reputation. Sarah laughed. She's scared. But the threats escalated. One night our mailbox was smashed. Its metal frame twisted like paper. Security footage showed a masked figure with a crowbar. The police were called, but no fingerprints. No license plate. 2 days later, someone dumped nails across our driveway. I caught the glint just before reversing over them. Then came the fake animal control report, a claim that Sarah had a dangerous unlicensed dog. They showed up and found nothing, of course, but the pattern was clear. She's trying to get us to move, I said. To surrender. Sarah looked me dead in the eye. I don't retreat, not from criminals, and sure as hell not from cowards hiding behind bylaws. She contacted a former investigative journalist friend. Within 48 hours, the woman had a list of Eleanor's shady business dealings, including her private towing contracts, her undisclosed rental property, and misappropriated HOA funds. We had enough to go nuclear. But Sarah wanted to give the neighborhood one last chance. Sarah and I requested a special town hall, open to all residents. Surprisingly, it was granted. Probably because Eleanor thought she could control the narrative again. But this time, we brought backup. Frank and Monica shared their stories. The Nguyens brought printed records. Sarah rolled to the front and stood slowly with her cane. My name is Sarah Reynolds. I served as a K-9 officer for a decade. My injuries are real. My scars are real. And so is the harassment my family has faced. From this HOA and from Eleanor Matthews. Gasps, whispers, tension thick enough to choke. Sarah continued, voice calm. This isn't just about my home. This is about what happens when power goes unchecked, when rules become weapons, when leadership becomes dictatorship. She pulled out the investigative report. These are your dues, misused. These are towing contracts funneled to companies Eleanor owns. These are complaints ignored, families threatened, lives disrupted. Eleanor stood, face red, voice trembling. This is slander. No, said the journalist from the back. It's public record, and I'm publishing it tomorrow. Silence, then murmurs of agreement. Frank raised his hand. I motion that Eleanor be suspended pending an independent audit. Cheers. Applause. A second, a third. The vote passed, and for the first time Eleanor Matthews had no words. Eleanor Matthews didn't show up the next morning. For someone who had dominated every bulletin board, every neighborhood decision, every HOA newsletter for years, her absence felt like a shift in gravity. The power center had collapsed. An emergency. Email from the HOA board went out. Effective immediately, Eleanor Matthews has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation into alleged misconduct. Neighbors who had once been passive, or too afraid to speak, suddenly found their voices. Lawn signs reading, "Transparency Now," appeared. Old friends who had distanced themselves from us stopped by to offer apologies and support. It's like she had the whole neighborhood hypnotized, Monica said during a front porch coffee gathering. Now that spell's broken. But Eleanor wasn't done. We discovered she had filed a temporary restraining order against Sarah, citing threats and targeted harassment. It was laughable and easily disproven in court, but it was one last desperate attempt to regain control through legal intimidation. Sarah showed up to the hearing with her badge, her medical files, and the journalist's published exposé in hand. The judge took one look at the materials and dismissed the petition, but the emotional toll lingered. "She'll keep coming," Sarah said that evening, exhausted. "She can try," I told her, "but now everyone's watching." A month later, the independent audit concluded. The findings hit like a sledgehammer: $47,000 in unauthorized expenses, funneled to towing companies and consultants with personal ties to Eleanor. HOA funds used for private catering, event spaces, and even a personal security system for Eleanor's home. The kicker? A side fund, marked discretionary maintenance, that had been quietly depleted over 3 years. The receipts showed that the fund had largely been used for travel and professional services that had no connection to community upkeep. Frank called it white-collar crime in cul-de-sac clothing. The board, now restructured with interim members, voted to report the findings to the district attorney's office. Civil litigation began almost immediately. Residents were furious. Dues had gone up twice in the past 4 years, justified by rising maintenance costs. Meanwhile, Eleanor had treated the HOA like her personal piggy bank. Sarah helped organize a town forum where the audit findings were presented with full transparency. She insisted that no one else be scapegoated, that only Eleanor and those complicit face consequences. "No witch hunts," she said firmly. "Just accountability." The forum ended with a standing ovation. For once, the community was united, not by fear, but by shared determination to rebuild something better. The journalist's article had made ripples, but when a national news outlet picked it up, complete with interviews, footage of the town hall, and a photo of Sarah in uniform, everything changed. "Disabled Veteran Exposes HOA Corruption in Suburban Showdown," read the headline. Overnight, the story trended online. News crews arrived, cameras set up outside our home. Sarah handled it with grace, calm, measured, and honest. "I didn't do this for attention," she told the anchor. "I did it because justice matters, whether you're in uniform or in a wheelchair." The response was overwhelming. Veterans groups reached out, offering support. Disabled rights organizations asked her to speak at their events. She was invited onto a podcast about civic resilience and leadership. Through it all, she remained grounded. "I'm not a hero," she told me one night. "I'm just tired of people abusing power. And I finally had enough strength to say no." The recognition opened new doors. A local university offered her a part-time position as an advisor for a law and community safety course. She accepted, not for the spotlight, but because she wanted to equip others with tools she had to learn the hard way. Her voice, once silenced by injury and trauma, now carried farther than ever before. The Sycamore Ridge HOA was in pieces, but it was our chance to rebuild it right. Sarah joined the Interim Advisory Committee. Monica chaired the ethics panel. Darren, the single father, helped draft new inclusivity guidelines. Frank offered his experience on a finance subcommittee. We rewrote the bylaws with legal oversight and community input. No more closed-door meetings. No more vague language. No more arbitrary enforcement. Every vote was recorded. Every expense was published online. Every resident, regardless of status or ability, had a voice. Sarah pushed for accessibility measures, better ramps, crosswalk markers, clearer emergency plans. Small changes, but they mattered. The old culture of fear was replaced with cooperation. Eleanor's former allies either resigned quietly or recused themselves from decisions. "You changed the neighborhood," Monica told Sarah. "You didn't just fight back, you built something stronger." Sarah shook her head. "We did." The community garden was reopened. A block party was scheduled, the first one in 5 years. Kids played in the park again without whispers or suspicious glances. Peace didn't come instantly, but it grew, steadily, watered by trust, nourished by shared effort. For the first time in years, it felt like home. Eleanor was eventually charged with embezzlement and fraud. Her trial was quiet but publicized. She pleaded no contest and avoided jail, but paid heavy fines and was barred from participating in any HOA leadership roles statewide. She moved out of Sycamore Ridge soon after. I saw her once at the grocery store, months later. She looked older, humbled. She didn't speak, just nodded as I passed. Sarah never saw her again, and maybe that was for the best. Instead, Sarah poured her energy into new endeavors. She spoke at a veterans advocacy conference. She helped draft policy recommendations for HOA reform at the state level. Her health still had bad days, but her spirit, once dimmed, burned brighter than ever. One crisp fall morning, we stood on our porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over a neighborhood that finally felt alive. "Do you regret not moving away when it all started?" I asked. Sarah smiled. "No, because if we'd left, who would have stopped her?" She looked out over the lawns, the children biking down the sidewalks, the elderly couple tending their rose bushes, no longer under threat of fines. "This is the home I fought for," she said, "and I'd do it again." We stood in silence, for a while, not in fear, not in defiance, but in peace. And for the first time since this battle began, we knew it was finally over.